Welcome to an Ohio State football show where we're actually going to talk about football this week because we have a game that is worth talking about. When you follow Ohio State, when you write about Ohio State, you spend a lot of time trying to find interesting things to discuss because most of the time trying to spend a week talking about Ohio State versus Illinois is not worth it. Ohio State, Michigan State is worth it. We have a matchup Saturday in East Lansing between two teams that are, frankly, ridiculously evenly matched. Bill Landis, if I told you that Ohio State had scored 365 points this year in 8 games, how many points would you think Michigan State has scored?
366.
364.
Oh.
Michigan State has scored one fewer point than Ohio State. Ari, if I told you that Michigan State has allowed 162 points this year, how many do you think Ohio State has allowed?
161.
159. So anyway, we're 1 point apart offensively, 3 points apart defensively. They're even. Michigan State has played better teams. They have a loss to Oregon. Oregon is better than Virginia Tech, the team that beat Ohio State. And Michigan State has a better win than Ohio State does with the win at home over Nebraska. Ohio State hasn't played a team close to that good. So as we break down this game, we're going to start first with the Ohio State offense against the Michigan State defense. Ari, you are a guy who really tracks JT Barrett through each game. We saw what he did lighting up weaker teams for a month. We saw what he did struggling a little bit, but then winning the game in double overtime at Penn State. We saw what he did last week against Illinois. What do you think you will see from JT Barrett this week, and how good do you think JT Barrett has to be for Ohio State to win?
I think JT Barrett has to be very sharp, the sharpest potentially that he's been all year, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be able or come close to matching the statistical output that he put 5 out of the last 6 games because they're playing against a very good team, but he's got to be able to not only manage the game and avoid the turnover, but we've talked about and written about this week that he has to make harder throws. The bad sign for Ohio State, I think, at this point is that he's hasn't played 2 very good games, and those 2 games were the loss of Virginia Tech and, of course, the game they almost lost to Penn State. So the common denominator that we have when we look at JT and whether or not he's capable of doing this is that he's struggled against the best teams that they've faced. And now he's going back on the road. He's going against the best team by far that Ohio State will face all year. Can he play a productive game without making mistakes and turning the ball over against a team like Michigan State? And I think right now, a reasonable expectation would be that he's going to be somewhere in the middle. He's not going to be the guy who throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns like he does against, those inferior opponents, but he has to be a lot better than he was at Penn State.
Bill, you and I watched the Michigan State-Michigan game the other night in my basement. We did not invite Ari.
It was magical.
That hurt his feelings. Are you okay?
No, it was like a half. Hey, you can come too if you want. Like, I don't need your pity. I have plans, ladies.
So we were in the dungeon watching Michigan State. And Devin Gardner in that game 2 weeks ago, Michigan State coming off a bye, which is something that the Ohio State coaches have made note of many times. That may be an advantage for Michigan State. But in that game, Devin Gardner for Michigan just seemed to give the ball to the Spartans a couple times. Yeah. And when that happened, I think we looked at that and said, well, JT Barrett's not going to do that.
Yeah.
But it does just seem like Michigan State, with the people they're going to have in the box, with the tight coverage they're going to have with their corners on the outside receivers, it's just going to be tighter. It's going to be fewer opportunities where guys are running free. Now, Michigan State has allowed some guys to get behind them. They've been beaten deep in some games. People said their safeties played better against Michigan last time out. That didn't happen as much. Do you think JT, if he needs to make some of these tighter throws, can do it?
I don't know, frankly, because we really haven't seen him. I think I can remember one throw all year that was like, wow, that was a really good throw, because most of the time his receivers have been wide open. But on the flip side of that, too, there haven't been a lot of throws that JT has made. He's missed some open guys, but there haven't been a lot of throws where I thought to myself, I can't believe he threw that ball. What a terrible throw that was. I think he does a pretty good job of protecting the football. At least he's done that through the first 8 games of the season. But this is a different animal. Trying to fit the ball into tight windows, which he hasn't had to do all year. And I don't know. There's been some talk about his arm strength. We've talked about it, and I think the coaches have talked about it too. And I don't know if that just means he can't get the ball downfield, or if that means if he has a half a second to get it into a really tight window to a guy coming across the middle with a cornerback draped all over him if he can do that. So I'm not sure if he can make the
I don't
throws.
want to. We talked about this in the press box on Saturday. I know we have to get to the next, but at times JT Barrett has seen open guys and made the wrong type of throw.
Yeah,
right? Bill,
yeah, the
like you
wrong
were
type.
ta-
Yeah, the wrong type. Not forcing. I don't think he's forced much of anything. Maybe against Virginia Tech, but yeah, he's
Like maybe bullet it instead of
lofting it,
like
and
the
then vice
Vanette
versa.
on the first
Yeah.
drive, Vanette got laid out, where maybe if he would have bulleted
Yeah.
it towards the middle, he might have been able to make a cleaner catch. The thing that I will say before we move on about JT Barrett is that through all the Heisman talk that people started creating, all the stats he's putting up, and even the fact that Ohio State has still only lost one game, JT Barrett as a freshman on the road at Michigan State is still somewhat of a question mark. We thought he is a proven passer, a proven entity, but right now there is still some uncertainty about whether he'll perform well enough to put Ohio State in a position to win that game on the road.
We're not moving on. I just want to talk.
Well, okay. Yeah, sorry. It seemed like you were in a rush to get
It's
to
like,
the
all
next.
right, it's my turn.
All right, my turn. Okay.
I asked Tom Herman about this yesterday, Ohio State's offensive coordinator, about whether he's going to have to make these more difficult throws. And something that he said twice, he said it after the game Saturday and said it again Monday, is JT Barrett is basically as accurate as any quarterback he has been around. And so if you are in a game where you have to make throws on time, in a smaller window, that kind of thing, JT Barrett is an accurate thrower. Now, we have seen him miss a couple things down the field. He's underthrown some guys. He actually overthrew Devin Smith on a deep ball, which was surprising because usually he maybe underthrows it a little bit and lets a guy make a play. I'll be curious if Michigan State does allow Ohio State receivers to get behind them at all. I think in the Virginia Tech game, Ohio State fell into a trap of going deep too much. They thought that was the solution to beating that defense. When if they're going to win, they have to get the ball to Dontre Wilson and Jalen Marshall and Curtis Samuel and Michael Thomas and guys in space, however they do that, jet sweeps, screens, whatever. So Tom Herman did say that. You've got to take deep shots against a defense like this, but if you fall in love with trying to do that, you're going to put yourself behind the eight ball. So they have to find the right balance with that, and they have to do it against a defensive line. Bill, we talked about this. Shalik Calhoun was in our poll, which is the most substantial Big Ten poll you'll find before the season. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten at one defensive end, yet Marcus Rush from Michigan State has maybe played as well as him. Two really good defensive ends. You've been our offensive line guy all year. How do you think the Ohio State offensive line will hold up against the Michigan State defensive line? Michigan State, by the way, 28 sacks this year. That's 4 more than Ohio State has.
Yeah, I think that Shalik Calhoun is a name that comes up most often, and deservedly so. But the matchup that I'm more interested to see is Marcus Rush against Darryl Baldwin, Ohio State's right tackle. Because when we were watching the recording of the Michigan State game, Marcus Rush, remember he put that crazy spin move on, I don't know who Michigan's right tackle is, we put that crazy spin move on him and got to Devin Gardner in about 3 steps. And I don't know if Darryl Baldwin's a pretty athletic guy, and we've written about that and they've talked about it. I don't know if he's seen like that kind of speed coming off the edge this year. I don't think Taylor Decker's seen it on the opposite side with Shalik Calhoun either. But I think Taylor Decker has the experience of going against Calhoun. Not that he's going to completely neutralize him. I think that's going to be an intriguing one-on-one battle. But the one that would concern me is Darryl Baldwin, who's in his first year starting, going against a guy with kind of speed like Marcus Rush has.
One thing the coaches talked about this week, and when JT Barrett does get pressured, they think he does a very good job of deciding to get away from that pressure, and as Urban Meyer says, put his foot in the ground, get north and south, and instead of getting sacked, get a 4-yard gain and keep you on time in the drive. So instead of 2nd and 12, it's 2nd and 6. I think that's going to be a big thing. Everybody's going to get pressured, whether it's JT Barrett or Michigan State cornerback Connor Cook. What do you do when the pressure comes? Do you get sacked? Do you throw a pick? Do you escape it and make a big play? Do you get a couple yards and sort of live for another day? When you think about the Ohio State offense in this game, Ari, beyond JT Barrett, who are the 1 or 2 guys that you think maybe Ohio State can use to exploit the Michigan State defense that maybe you think need to have big games, whether it's a running back, a tight end, a receiver? Who are you looking for the Buckeyes?
What's interesting to me is that the Ohio State-Michigan State game has often been decided by the power running game on both sides. And, Ezekiel Elliott, though didn't start last week against Illinois, is he capable at the end of the game, if Ohio State is winning or losing by a small margin in the fourth quarter, can Ohio State move the ball on the ground up the middle through their power run game? Because Tom Herman yesterday described this team as still a power running team. Well, to me, I'm really looking forward to seeing whether or not Ohio State can move the ball against that defensive line and overpower. I mean, 2 years ago at Michigan State, Ohio State won by a point, and the famous, there was 5 minutes left, and they just ran the clock out because Michigan State couldn't stop them. So the guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing is Ezekiel Elliott. I think we know he can get outside, and I think that his versatility is what makes him such an intriguing player. But in a game like this, when it comes to can you pick up 4 yards against this defense consistently, I really want to know if Ezekiel Elliott can do that. And I think they're going to rely on him a lot. I mean, Devin Smith has made huge plays in this series. Dontre Wilson and Jalen Marshall, all those guys, it goes without saying they're going to need to get them involved. But when it comes to having an identity, is Ohio State still the team that can rely on its power rushing attack? I think we'll really find out on Saturday.
We, of course, are taking your comments during the show here. If you want to chime in, Ari will include what you're saying here.
Yeah, hurry.
There has been a comment, one of our frequent commenters, John in Columbus, made a point in some of our stories this week. What's going on, John?
Love you, John.
That some people think maybe that if you come out early, and he used the phrase, punch the Buckeyes in the mouth under Urban Meyer, maybe they don't respond well to that and you can jump on them. I think I actually disagree with that. I think, and you've pointed this out in the Virginia Tech game, when Ohio State has not won these games, they've been right where they need to be in the third and fourth quarter with the ball in their hands, and they haven't been able to make the drive in the second half that matters. They had 3 chances to do it against Virginia Tech, as you have said.
Not 1 first down in that situation. You got to get a first down, you know?
Last year against Michigan State, they were up. They let Michigan State get back in it, and then what's it come down to? Ohio State has the ball, 4th and 2. They can't make the play offensively to keep that drive alive, and maybe if they make that play, they go in and maybe they win that game.
Both games are down by multiple touchdowns, is your point.
But they don't, what they haven't done is come out, boom, they get knocked back, and it's over. You know, Penn State even, they had the big lead, and then they threw a pick 6, and then they lost the lead in the second half, but they didn't disappear. They found a way to win. So, I mean, it's going to be, I would not at all be surprised if this game comes down in the end. There's a drive late in the third quarter, maybe in the fourth quarter, where JT Barrett and the offense goes on the field, down 7, down 3, tie game, whatever, and you know if this offense can drive the ball and score a touchdown right here, Ohio State's probably going to win.
Which is
and they're going to have to do that.
Kind of hand in hand of why I said what I said about my guy, this week, because I do believe that when you talk about teams that are this evenly matched, and I'm a huge Vegas spread guy, the spread's 3.5 points. It's going to be a close game. If Ohio State does face a situation where it needs to drive it, can they move the ball consistently enough on the ground to keep Michigan State off balance and to pick up the yards and do the things they need to do to win the game? And they couldn't do it in the Big Ten Championship last year, and maybe an overwhelmed version of JT Barrett, an offense that wasn't prepared for Virginia Tech's defense, couldn't even manage a first down. And they had 3 chances, which is like, if you tell me anytime if you're down by a score in the fourth quarter and you have 3 different chances at the ball, if Ohio State can score once, I'm saying, yeah, of course. So, you know, I think JT Barrett's growth and development, that it seems to be drastic, will be put to test. But can Ohio State muscle its way to a touchdown when it matters? Because I do believe, in my mind, I think we all agree, you'll find out on Friday when we make our predictions, that this is going to be a close game. And if it's, 1 drive or 2 drives that are going to make the difference, that's the big thing.
In the end, I think Michigan State's defense, not quite as good as it was last year, still very good.
Yep.
We'll flip it now and talk about the other matchup. It's the Ohio State defense against the Michigan State offense, and I think we can say this definitively. This Michigan State offense is much better than the Michigan State offense of a year ago. You have something coming on Connor Cook, the Michigan State quarterback, this week. We saw what he did in the Big Ten title game against Ohio State last year. I think in that moment, it was maybe a little more of a surprise that he played that well. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised if Connor Cook plays well against Ohio State in this game.
No, he's really, and we spoke to him last night as well, and he kept kind of harping on the idea that he feels more comfortable in this offense, even though it is a bit different than it was last year. They've added a bit more of a spread element to it, more so than just the get under center, line it up, play action, or pound the ball. So it's more versatile, and I was really surprised when we watched the game against Michigan. Michigan State had more playmakers than I thought they did. It wasn't quite to the level I think that Ohio State's offense is, but it was close, and I know the numbers are practically identical with both offenses. But I think Michigan State might surprise some people with how they come out lined up, some of the things they try to do. They ran a it was a fake jet sweep option keeper, and Connor Cook gained 13 yards, and I never in a million years would have thought I'd seen that from Connor Cook or Michigan State. So I think the offense has evolved, and Cook has got more comfortable. Now, he's not perfect. He's not out there. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Peyton Manning. But he makes the throws he's supposed to make, and every now and then he'll make a throw that will make you go, wow, this guy's gotten a lot better.
I think he can throw on the move under pressure. I think he can also hang in the pocket and make a throw in the pocket and then take a hit. We've seen the Ohio State defensive line. We've seen what Joey Bosa has done, especially in the past couple games. Can that defensive line win this game for Ohio State, do you think? Can this defense be good enough? Do you think this defensive line with Michael Bennett, Adolphus Washington, all these guys get enough pressure to disrupt Connor Cook and keep this offense from being as good as it's been?
What's interesting to me is in games that are supposed to be this close, one game-breaking play from can mean the difference, right? And what game have we seen this year where Joey Bosa didn't make one of those plays? So I think they're going to key on him. I'm assuming they're going to do what they can to keep him out of the backfield. And this is the game too where you might feel the absence of Noah Spence a little bit, but Ohio State still is supposedly one of the best defensive lines in the country. And Joey Bosa, we knew would be good. I don't think we knew he would have these tangible impact on every single game that they've had, whether it's a sack, a forced fumble, a touchdown. I mean, they've scored because of him. And I think if Ohio State on the road can make one big, huge, drastic, game-changing play, whether it's Bosa or somebody else, that could be enough to lift Ohio State on the road because, defensive touchdowns and defensive swings, really, you know how important those are. I also want to let you know, maybe this isn't very smooth, but we have some offensive stuff from the commenters. So I don't know if you want to double back.
We'll double back. Whatever the
We'll double back for Hokie Wolf
back.
because he exploded with 12 things in 30 seconds. And we'll just get to him, before we get too deep into the defense. So first of all, and I know that you did some reporting on this and you're going to be writing about this, Doug, but he wants to know, how did Oregon beat Michigan State's defense, and can you draw any comparisons to the way Ohio State might attack them from, the way the Ducks were successful?
Yeah, I asked Michigan State defenders about this last night. It's a hard distinction a little bit, Bill, and you and I were trying to sort of sort through the stats on this. Ohio State is no huddle.
Yeah.
And they are up-tempo, but they're not necessarily attacking you with the snap.
Yeah.
Like, they'll get to the line and then sort of settle themselves and see what's going on. I don't know if they might wear the Michigan State defense out. Now, when I asked Marcus Rush, did you guys wear down against Oregon? He said, no, we didn't wear down. But, Michigan State in that game had a big lead. I wrote it down. And they were up 27-18 versus Oregon. And in the last 20 minutes of that game, Oregon outscored Michigan State 28-0. So something happened. Michigan State was stopping Oregon, and then they weren't stopping Oregon anymore. I think if you want to play Michigan State, I think you're better off being up-tempo than not being up-tempo. Do you think that could be a difference maker for the Ohio State offense?
If they change a bit, yeah, like you said it, that Ohio State is up-tempo in the fact that they don't huddle and they probably snap the ball quicker than most teams. But I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, so maybe I am wrong about this. But from what I know about Oregon's offense, I think Oregon gets to the line and snaps it right away. Oregon's offense is like a well-oiled machine. They've been doing it so long that the guys get to the line and it seems like they just know what the next play is. They don't have to stop. They don't have to look to the sideline and get the calls in. There's no mass confusion, which we've seen sometimes from Ohio State on the road, especially at Penn State. So I think there is an element of that. I think if Ohio State pushes the tempo a little more and keeps Michigan's defense on the field, that could certainly work in their favor. But I'm not quite sure they can get it to the level that Oregon's at.
Now, we do see it at times. There's definitely a different mode where Ohio State will go, and they are the official can barely put the ball down before they're ready to snap. Would we be shocked if they do that more than they've done that ever this season, this week? I mean, they can do that. It's not maybe their normal thing to be that quick. Maybe they will try to be that quick at least for a couple drives.
Okay, and one more from him, because he's always commenting. He deserves two. Why should I believe that last season's loss to Michigan State won't be an exact copy this Saturday? We were so inept in the passing game that we couldn't complete a pass to save our lives, and J.T. Barrett was not that accurate last week.
I think the Michigan State defense was a little better last year. I think Ohio State was not as prepared and aware of what they were facing. And I think that one thing, and I wanted to mention this when we'll talk more about the Ohio State defense. They had breakdowns, absolute catastrophic breakdowns in that game, where one touchdown in particular is just the kind of thing you should never give up. Mm-hmm. That was 7 points I don't think they'll give up in this game. Could the secondary get beat? Absolutely. The Ohio State secondary. Connor Cook will make some good plays. I don't think the Ohio State secondary will just basically give away a touchdown with a breakdown the way they did last year.
Yeah, I think it's Ohio State's defense is better. Michigan State's defense is probably slightly worse, so that changes things a bit. There's certainly things you can take from the game, and that was the first thing that Ohio State watched after the Illinois game was a tape from last year. But I think it's more. I think that both teams are more different than I think people realize this year.
So if we'll slide back now a little bit
yeah.
to, again, the Ohio State, wait, it's who? It's the Ohio State
the
defense.
Ohio State defense versus
Michigan State offense.
Hokie Wolf just messing us up.
Here's my question. Here, I'll give you guys trivia questions. Guess how many sacks Michigan State has allowed this whole season in 8 games?
I know the answer.
Okay, you know facts. You don't know facts.
How many sacks? I'm the dumbest reporter. I'm the dumbest one, remember?
You did win our poll for dumbest reporter. We'll try again later this year.
Ask me all the questions.
How many sacks has Michigan State allowed this whole season in 8 games?
4.
5.
Nailed it.
That's third best in the country, which is obviously the offensive line for Michigan State must be doing something right. Connor Cook must be doing something right in terms of being smart, feeling pressure, getting rid of the ball. That is an unbelievable matchup. I mean, Joey Bosa has more sacks than that by himself.
Yeah.
Who wins that matchup? And again, I think you made a good point. I don't think they don't have to sack him every play. If they can force one bad throw that's picked, if they can get one huge sack on third down that forces a punt, a couple plays like that can change the game.
Huge, and I haven't watched college football so intently as closely as we've watched Ohio State, obviously. But I can't remember. This is my 6th year on the Ohio State beat. I can't remember anybody on an Ohio State defense that changed games the way that Joey does. And, there's a lot of, you can argue that. There's been great players, but the point is that as a defensive end and somebody who can impact a game that way, it's almost impossible to think he can be stopped.
He's going to be in it for a battle this week, though, because guys, I love stats.
Stats.
Yeah.
Say it. Stats.
So there's 2 things I love: stats and the offensive line.
And 1 pound Reese's Cups.
And 1 pound Reese's Cups. I get to combine 2 of the 3. Now, Michigan State's offensive line, 4 of the 5 starters are 4th year or more. So there's mostly redshirt juniors and redshirt seniors. And the one guy who's not is the left tackle, Jack Conklin, who Bosa's most likely going to be lined up against the entire game. Jack Conklin has not allowed a sack in 2 years.
He says he's the best guy.
Yeah.
He's the young guy, but he's their best lineman.
Best offensive lineman.
Wow. Dude, that is interesting.
That's one of there's a lot of side plots to this, and we're going to write about them all. But Michigan State is older. Ohio State is younger. We know all the veterans Ohio State had last year. This is a much younger team, and Michigan State, although they lost some key guys, they're a much older team this year. The last way we're going to break this down, we talked about it yesterday some in a video that we put up that you wrote about. It's sort of like all the other things of this game, all like the emotional factors, the coaching factors. Do we think anybody has an edge in any of that stuff beyond offense versus defense, players on the field, talent, scheme, that kind of stuff? Would you give an edge to either team for one reason or the other based on Mark D'Antonio versus Urban Meyer, based on Michigan State's at home, based on Ohio State's out for revenge, based on anything like that? Does anybody have sort of an intangible edge this week?
That's tough. You know what I thought was interesting? We were talking to our good friend Bo Bishop in the press box on Saturday, and he said how I think Urban against their 3 rivals at Florida only lost once.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine actually sent me an interesting text last night saying Ohio State hasn't lost back-to-back games to non-Michigan opponents since 1994 or something crazy like that. I don't know if I could be wrong about the exact stat, but my point is that to me, I have a hard time believing that Urban Meyer, based on what happened last year, might allow his Ohio State team, the program that's supposed to run the Big Ten, to lose twice to that team. Now, Michigan State is really good and a lot better than maybe a lot of the Big Ten teams they've faced the last 15 years. But I think there is something to the revenge thing. I think there's something to not allowing the program. Ohio State, in my opinion, is way less able to afford a loss in this game from just the direction the program is supposed to be in than Michigan State. I don't know if you agree with that, but to me, there's so much more riding on this game for Ohio State than Michigan State, so I might give them a little bit of an edge.
Talking signature win, that's a phrase people like to use.
National respect.
What is Ohio State's best win under Urban Meyer? He's 31-3, I think it is.
Michigan
What's
State
the
game
best-
2 years ago.
What's the best? And that Michigan State team went 7-6. What do you in the search for a win to help define this era of Ohio State? Is that anything does that do anything to this game at all? That Ohio State maybe, and I think you make a good point that Ohio State really maybe sort of needs a win like this.
Yeah, I think that is a factor, and it came up earlier in the year too, and I believe it was Rod Smith, who obviously isn't on the team anymore, but after they beat Kent State, he said that they felt slighted nationally after losing to Virginia Tech, and they felt like they had to get some of that back. I don't know how much of that you get back by beating Kent State 66-0, but this is a game where you can get some of that back. And Urban Meyer said that. He said this is a game where Ohio State can get back some of the national respect that he thinks they deserve. And frankly, they haven't done much. I mean, Ohio State's always going to be respected because it's a traditional college football power, but we just touched on it. What have they done in the 3 years that Urban Meyer's been here to earn that respect? They've beaten the teams they're supposed to beat and lost the big games. This is a big game. And I think that plays into the mindset of this team, that they have another shot to show people that they're for real and they deserve respect.
I think earning back that trust is a gradual thing, too. I don't think you go and you beat Michigan State and then all of a sudden you're the team. I think Ohio State needs to repeatedly prove that it is built through recruiting and in the roster and through coaching to compete with Alabama, to compete with the best teams in this country repeatedly. It's not going out and winning. Of course, it's the first step. But if you lose this game, it's just the fourth time in 4 tries that Ohio State's lost the biggest game on their schedule. So they need to win this game, but I think that Ohio State in general needs to earn back national trust to the point where, well, they're recruiting top 5 classes every year. They've got Urban Meyer, who's a mastermind, and they're in a conference that they can dominate. But I think that they have a long way to go before they can earn back the trust of the national fan bases to say, well, this team is on par with some of the elite programs from the South.
Back there?
I don't know. It's our stadium.
He's trying to find himself.
Here's a thing. I'm curious how this could play into this. Michigan State was up 27-18 versus Oregon and lost that lead and lost that game. Michigan State was up 27-3 on Nebraska, and in the fourth quarter, Nebraska outscored Michigan State 19-0 and got back in that game. I think whether it's strategic or whatever, it may be that Michigan State in these games, if they get ahead, they're taking the foot off the gas a little bit. They're trying to lock it down and ease their way to a win. I think there's a chance for something to emerge where Ohio State gets down. Michigan State is trying to squeeze the life out of the game and hold on. And Ohio State is faced with these moments, that you've talked about, these things where, all right, are you going to do it? Here you're going to do it. And it could be, beyond a defining win, just like a chance for Ohio State with this offense, that the offense looks like the offense Urban Meyer wants, with different skill guys, with spreading the ball around, with some speed guys. Here you are. You're down 14. Michigan State's happy to maybe run the ball and punt. Here you go. Can you do it? Wouldn't that be great? Say it goes the other way too. Say Ohio State's up 14 points and Michigan State's got to prove it. But isn't it going to be great that we're going to get that? Don't you think we're going to get that one way or the other, that we're going to see what these teams are all about? And do you think this is going to be a great game that is going to be good for the Big Ten? Or is there a chance that we come out and both teams maybe don't play up to their caliber?
What's crazy to me is that we've covered this team now for 2 months, and we never really quite know what they are.
We're always talking about how we
don't know.
And then we look dumb because we think they're going to blow up Penn State and win in double overtime.
Yeah, no, I mean, we always look dumb, I think, but
You're the most.
It's hard, but it's hard. It's hard
just like
to read it
the Virginia
sometimes.
Tech game. Well, JT Barrett's a freshman making his first start. The Bear defense, so you have that excuse. I mean, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but you have that as something to weigh on. Then you blow out teams, well, are they back? And then they play Penn State poorly, and it's like they haven't played. Every week we're sitting in the press box writing our stories and looking up at SEC games of oh my gosh, look at that moment of Mississippi State making the biggest play in the college football and taking a win against a great team. What do you know about Mississippi State? You know that they are a great team because they did it. When Ohio State beats up on bad teams, we don't get anything from that.
Right.
We don't know anything. So it'll be nice to see Maybe Ohio State will be down by 4 with 5 minutes left, and then they'll put together a 7-play drive and punch it in against the best team in the Big Ten and do something that we can trust.
Well, I mean, and it does to me legitimize everything else you do. Like Mississippi State didn't beat Kentucky by that much, but they have other wins where you say they showed us something. So if they have a close game against Kentucky, you don't necessarily as much say, well, what the heck's wrong with them? Where Ohio State hasn't had the opportunity as much to legitimize those things. So they play a close game against a Penn State team that's average, and you say, what's wrong with those guys? If you beat Michigan State, you change the whole conversation, I think.
Yeah, this is, and you guys have obviously been on this beat longer than I have, but this entire season, even after the loss of Virginia Tech, I've come away with more questions than answers after every game. And Penn State, I mean, probably a fluke. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that game. But this is a game where I'm looking forward to because I think all the questions that maybe it's selfish. All the questions that I have, I think are going to be answered in this game.
Here's what I think about, this is my last thought on it. I think it's very possible if both teams play a 10 game, play their best, Ohio State is better. I think Ohio State's best might be better than Michigan State's best. If they both play a 10, maybe Ohio State wins. If they both play a 5, maybe Ohio State wins. But which team is more likely to play close to its best? In this environment that it's at Michigan State, with all the things swirling around, you know, if Michigan State plays a 9 game and Ohio State plays a 6 game, Michigan State's going to win, I think. So I think I can see maybe with what they have, Ohio State's ceiling might be higher. I think the question's going to be how close the Buckeyes can get to their ceiling in this moment, in this environment, on this night Saturday. We'll have coverage leading up to this game all week. We will continue with our Real Game series as we discuss how this Ohio State-Michigan State week is really in a lot of ways better than the Ohio State-Michigan week because Michigan has not played up to caliber so far. And we, of course, will be there in East Lansing, 8 o'clock on Saturday night.
Throw a little recruiting plug in there, too. You know,
We've
got a lot going
on.
on.
Ari wrote 19 recruiting stories yesterday, all about Torrance Gibson, and he's got some more stuff coming with some guys who are teammates right now. One's going to Michigan State, one's going to Ohio State. Ari was there and talked to them both. Really good stuff coming on Thursday. Is that okay?
You did good. You did good.
He's Bill Landis. I'm Ari Wasserman.
You are. You wish. Oh, man, in your wildest dreams.
I'm going to put that on your picture on your Instagram. I'm Ari Wasserman. I'm Doug Lesmerises. He's Ari Wasserman. Thanks for watching our show this week. Stick with us all week here on cleveland.com.